All right, let's jump in now to our player of the week. It was the fullback for Rugby ATL, Adriaan Carelse, and he had an absolute blinder for ATL, and he's been actually really outstanding the last couple of weeks, Pete. So let's not hesitate and bring him into the show.
So, to be honest, the first thing, when we got there on our way to the place where I stay, so back in South Africa, we have the driver sits on the right.
Yep.
So that was like surprisingly, and I think the people, like the first day when I got there, so the first day we had medicals, and when I met the guys, they were really cool. Like everyone literally came up to me and came to come introduce themselves, and I thought that was really cool, and I really felt like welcome from the first day. And just the way our coach Scott them goes about the thing and the whole setup, yeah, I couldn't have asked for better. And like I said, it was a mission getting here. I was supposed to be here in February already, but with the COVID and with the traveling restrictions and all of that, it made it a bit difficult to get here. So yeah, I haven't seen Atlanta. I haven't explored yet. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that. So to be honest, before the game, we had a lot of pressure on us. We had to win. It was a must-win game for us. And a lot of credit must go to our coaches. And yeah, the way they planned the strategies, how we're gonna play, and I think we as players just needed to execute. So our goal, or not our goal, but like the way we wanna play, we wanna throw the ball around. But how the weather was, the conditions wasn't suited to play that kind of rugby. And before the game, we were like, the team that plays in the right area will win the team. So yeah, it was like one of my goals was in the game to win the kicking transition. So not to run everything, especially with the wet ball. So I don't want to like say what our strategies was, but yeah, just to play in the right areas. And I think our defense was really good. We take pride in our defense. Like you all know, Coach Scott is all about you have to tackle the guy. So I think the first half we gave away like 3 soft tries, but that was we couldn't exit well, and we put ourselves under pressure. But I think the second half went much better. I think there was a time in the game when we defended like for 15 or to 16 phases, and like I heard from the guys, like if the team defends well, we normally plays well. So I think yeah, we just wanted to play in the right areas, let them make their mistakes, and yeah, just play from there, and yeah, just execute. So we wanted to exit, and I was back. Luckily, I was already back in the pocket. So we called a call. So the nine must kick, and I was in the pocket, almost like a bailout option. And he kicked, and they charged down the ball. Luckily, I was already at the back. But to be honest with you, my first instinct was to kick, but the guy was on me, so I felt a bit of pressure. And like in my head, I was like, if I put the ball down now, it's gonna be a 22 dropout, and then we're gonna give the ball to them. So I thought, okay, if I can beat this guy, but like I said, my first instinct was to kick. So I thought, okay, if I can beat him, then I'll take the pressure off me and then kick the ball out. And when I went past him, I saw this whole massive gap, and I just went through. And yeah, but to be honest, my first instinct was to kick. But like I said, when I went past him that hole, I also thought I surprised my team, because I thought they thought I'm gonna put the ball down. And I think the other team also suspected that I'll put the ball down. So I also thought, or also think maybe they stood still, thinking I'm gonna put the ball down. But when I went past him, the hole just opened up, So I just ran.
So, man, this is I just got knighted. So, I working with Aaron a little bit, our stats boy, I started to pull some of the numbers because I was really interested. We see a lot and we talk a lot about possession and territory. And I think today as we went through the different games down, I started saying, hey, look, these guys won. They didn't have an edge in possession. They didn't have an edge in territory. And I was like, man, is that right? Is possession and territory, like what's the impact of that? And I said, I wanted to know what the biggest impact was in points, right? And it is true that possession and territory do not correlate very well with points, right? Territory correlates a little bit better, but not much, right? And so I said, right, what does? Well, it turns out that number of rucks is a bad correlation, right? So that's interesting. So if rucks aren't a good correlation, offloads actually correlates pretty well, and line breaks correlate pretty well. So, and even better is your ability to convert tries to line break. So the number of tries per line break, that correlates the best, right? And so I think what we're seeing in MLR is that teams are able to score from a long way out, and that the better teams, the teams that score the most, don't need many phases, right? And so I think you see that like the Giltinis, right? The Giltinis are scoring from first phase, right? They had that like Whiteberg try, caught everyone out, right? Because it was like went out, one pass was a try. Like they're able to score very quickly. They're able to score from a long way out, and it's not just the Giltinis. I think Old Glory have that ability, right? I think the New England have that ability. I think NOLA have that ability. Going into the NOLA Atlanta game, they both had a lot of line breaks, but neither of them converted very well. And the big difference in the game was Atlanta was able to convert their line breaks. NOLA had 3 line breaks getting into the 22 of Atlanta, didn't convert them into tries. So I think what we're seeing here is that like the best teams trust that they can run with the ball even inside their own half, and they're able to score very quickly from a long way off, and they don't have to wear down the defenses. So defense probably isn't as good, but most importantly, I think what's lacking, which makes sense without a preseason and early on, is that there's no cover lines, right? So you really think about your first, second, and third line of defense. Without any preseason, what you're really working is on your first line, right? So the guys that come up, and then you're not working very much on who's covering that break in that second line, which is like often your like flanker, or it's your 9, and then that third line, which is the back 3 rotation. That's not, because you haven't had time to work on it. So I think it's interesting that the best teams keep the ball in hand inside their own half. They have a go, right? And then the teams that like when you give up those line breaks, the cover defense just isn't good enough. Rugby ATL were really down after they lost to Austin the week before. They came out like gangbusters, like scored a couple of tries up front, thought this was, might be a blowout. NOLA came back, scored a couple of tries, right? Dino Waldron got 2 tries. Ezkura got a try. It was like the first 20 minutes down was like really, really high level play. We were like, each team is going to score 50 points. Then it calmed down a little bit. And actually the second half is where this game was decided. And it was the defense of ATL. So in phase play, NOLA didn't score in the second half. They scored from a drop ball that Cam Dolan picked up.
I watched the highlights of that. Was that okay on review, that try? I know it was awarded, but it looked like there may have been a ricochet off a NOLA hand, and then it went down into Stevens, back up to Dolan.
There were a couple of calls this week that we don't have a TMO, and so the referee calls it. I think that's probably the way to.
Normally, when you have a scoreline like that, you wouldn't make this next statement, but it wasn't even that close, to be honest with you. LA never looked threatened here.
Yeah, I mean, and this is again, San Diego have really had some problems in their back line, right? They're really struggling. They didn't have Dylan Orsley as primary kicker. You could see that. They really struggled to play in the right part of the field. But they had 56% of the possession, but with only, and they had 7 line breaks, which is pretty good, but with only 44% of the possession, right? the Giltinis had 10 line breaks. The Giltinis are the best in the league at line breaks and the best at the league at converting those line breaks into tries, and we'll talk about why that's important. But the other thing that we're not talking enough about with the Giltinis is how good their defense is. So they had 146 tackles made. They only missed 21. That's 87. Like anything sort of above 85 is good. I think the Giltinis have a good defense. Their set piece is a bit of a weakness. Like I think that's where they can, you could look at the scrum. It was a little bit better this year, but I mean this week, but you could see that it was they really had some struggles in the lineouts. So I think that's where we may want to look. But this is something we haven't talked about much on the show, Dan. San Diego failed to get out of their 22 20% of the time. So when they had the ball inside their 22, they failed to get out 20% of the time. And they tried to run over 50%. So that just tells you that San Diego doesn't have a big foot. They don't have a big kicker. They don't have someone that can get them down the field. And that's going to be a real struggle for them.
Yeah, it is. And like you said, the injuries just keep mounting out there. So it'll be interesting to see, the roster they put together this week. And
sorry, Dan, just the other thing, LA might have a bit of a penalty issue. Like they had 14 penalties in this game alone. Remember, in the Atlanta NOLA game, there were 14 penalties total. So San Diego had 13 too. So maybe it's the referee, but there are some maybe you have to look pretty hard, but there's definitely some chinks here.
I personally didn't see this one coming at all. I really had New York as one of my top teams in the East coming into this game, but Toronto, wow, they have just turned up the last 2 weeks. And they're playing a brand of rugby that makes them very attractive on the East now.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is like the Toronto that we saw last year, right? That they were on a roll. And we're going to talk a little bit about possession and territory. And, when you look at the possession stats, it's 40 something, 50 something, like they're normally pretty close. Toronto had 61% of the possession and 63% of the territory. I mean, that's like so overwhelming. They had 11 line breaks to 4 by New York, and they made 89% of their tackles. Yeah. So it was just a really, really, really good performance. The benefit, what New York did do is they got over the gain line well. So they were able to get over the gain line, but they just weren't able to do much. They just didn't have enough of the ball. They, struggled a little bit with their ball retention, right? So they had no breakdown steals of Toronto, but Toronto had 6. And who was leading that, Dan? Can you guess? I'm
going to say it rhymes with Lucas Lumble.
It does. Lucas Rumble had another 3 breakdowns. I mean, steals, it's nuts. This guy is like dominating games at the breakdown. It's just, he's doing such a good job of disrupting. Makes it very, very difficult to play again.